Now we're recording.
Okay, thank you very much. This is Sam Alba, and thanks for all those who have joined us for IDC meeting. It's a very important one. We got a lot of areas that we need to cover today. In order for us to keep a good record, since we're doing this through Zoom, please identify yourselves and so that we can make sure we understand who is present at this meeting. So again, Sam Alba, and continue. Michael, I can see your picture.
Michael Zimmerman,
Join the meeting.
Commission member.
This is Pamela Vickery.
Thank you.
Lance Dean.
Let's stick with the commission for the moment.
Yeah,
Kim.
the commission, please.
Kim Cordova, Commissioner, CCJJ.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laureen Kamalu, one of the new IDC commissioners.
You are a new member. Welcome.
Thank you.
John?
Present.
That was Sean Milne, Tooele County Commissioner. Rich?
Wally Bugden.
Oh, let's go with Rich.
Richard Morrow, Commissioner.
Ryan?
Ryan Luce, Commissioner.
Heather? Oh, Heather, you muted? Representative Ferry, can you unmute? There you go, Heather. Heather? Oh, Representative Ferry.
Sure, I'm ready. Representative Ferry, Joel Ferry from Brigham City, Commissioner as well.
At least you're not on the tractor.
I got so much grief last time, I thought I better, stay home and make sure I have good connection for this one. This is an important one.
Thank you.
Right. Mike Drexel's joining us. Wally said he was there, but he'd be back in a moment. But now Mike, perfect. Mike's there. Mike, can you introduce yourself since you just joined? We're perfectly timely.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. I was finishing up another meeting. This is Michael Drexel. I'm the Assistant State Court Administrator over at the courts.
All right, let's go with IDC staff.
Adam Troop.
Joanna Landau, Director. Greg.
Greg Bates, Program Manager, Grant Program Manager.
Katrina.
Trina Adair, Training Coordinator.
Leslie, you're on there. Leslie.
Research and Data Analyst.
Deborah.
Deborah Nelson, Chief Appellate Attorney for Indigent Defense.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, we are definitely at a quorum, Sam, so you can continue.
All right, then let's try and dispense with some of the preliminary things. The minutes for our last meeting, do anyone want to make a motion regarding the minutes?
This is Sean Milne. I'll move to approve as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Join the meeting.
Okay, Michael, you seconded, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Any further discussion regarding the minutes? If not, say your name and vote for it. Sam Alba, for.
Michael Zimmerman, for.
Todd Weiler, for.
Laureen Kamalu, for. Well, yeah, I wasn't a member then, but I am now.
Okay.
Joel Ferry, for.
Richard Morrow, for.
Pam Vickery, for.
Michael Drexel, for. Wally Bugden, for.
Kim Cordova, for.
Ryan Luce, for.
Sean Milne, aye.
All right. So they're adopted. Let's Sean, while you're on, why don't we go on to item number 2 of the agenda, and that is the introduction of our new IDC Commissioner. She went through the process before the Senate Judiciary Committee, following Michael and I when we made our appearances before them. If you will introduce Lorraine, please.
Sure, thank you,
Appreciate
Mr. Chairman. That'd be my honor to. So Lorraine, who you just heard from in the vote, is a fellow county commissioner. She's hails from Davis County, and while I feel bad that she's not from Tooele County, she's still pretty good. Actually, she's wicked smart. I have a lot of respect for her, and I think she's going to be a fantastic contribution to this body. She's very thorough, and you're in your first term, correct?
Join the meeting.
2 years
Yeah,
in?
I've been serving for 1.5 years, so in my first term of 4 years, yes.
Yeah, and within a short amount of time, she has become really respected by her peers and has shown that she's in the job for the right reason. And she's got a great analytical mind. So if you can't tell, I have a lot of respect for her, and I think she's just going to be a great contribution to what we're all trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I just like to add, I was on the Zoom when the confirmation took place, and I listened to Lorraine and listened to her accomplishments, and I was quite impressed. And I noticed that she's, on the Children's Justice Center Board, the Davis County JRI Committee. She's also a board member of the Utah Administrative Office of the Court's Pretrial Release and Supervision Committee, so she has some familiarity with what we're talking about. So I think it's going to be a great addition. It's nice to welcome you.
Thank you so much,
Lorraine,
Sean and Michael.
welcome aboard, and we appreciate any input that you can offer to us all on the job that we have to try and accomplish here. And today is an interesting one, simply because of the issues that we have to deal with. So welcome aboard. Talk about, a baptism by fire. This is it. This is the big meeting of the year for us after a lot of angst and a lot of issues. Let's get to the legislative update. We have Senator Weiler, Representative Ferry, and then Joanna, anything else that you want to add? Senator Weiler?
Yeah, could I go last on this? I'm just trying to get back to my office. I'm in transit.
Okay, that's fine. Representative Ferry.
Sure. Thank you, Sam. So we find ourselves in kind of unprecedented times, as we've seen with the effects of the coronavirus and the slowdown in our economy. In the last few weeks, we've gone through a rebudgeting. Essentially, all of the work, and it was significant, all of the work that was done this last session has been, budget-wise, has been overturned. They basically, the committees and executive appropriations took any new appropriation that happened in 2020 and zeroed it out to begin with. And then they made additional cuts above and beyond that. And so we find ourselves in a situation where, where we had passed legislation approving an appellate, a statewide appellate division, which is now, the funding for that is now gone. Increases to just the general budget for the IDC pulled back. We had, through legislation and through work that we participated in, we'd also done looking at a study for tracking counsel at first appearance and other issues like that. We were going to coordinate with the University of Utah. All of that's gone. And so we're back to our base budget. Luckily that stayed whole, that wasn't cut, but it's a significant pullback from what we'd anticipated and what we worked so hard for over the past year. So it's a pretty tough situation. I think Joanna can tell it better than I can. I mean, she's dealing with it every day, but I think that we need to work hard with our legislators and others to make sure that in subsequent years we can try to bring this back up to where we have the ability and the financial backing and to be able to promote this, because it is so important and it does help so many throughout our state. Anyway, that's the situation we find ourselves in today. So we're going to have to rebuild, regroup, and start work again for the upcoming session. Hopefully we're still waiting for additional numbers to come in for the upcoming year. And hopefully we don't have to take on additional cuts in our state budget. Overall, we cut, our state budget was reduced. So not only were the 2020 numbers zeroed out, we had additional cuts of about 1.8% overall to the existing state budget. So that's the base budget. That's to numbers that were happening last year. And again, it's all stemming from the economic impacts of the COVID-19 shutdown and the significant unemployment rates that we're seeing throughout our state.
Join the meeting.
So for me, that's the legislative update. That's what we've been working on the last few months. And that's the situation we find ourselves in today. So,
Joanna, you have any comments to add?
No, I think that's spot on. We talked about it last meeting as well. And what we're going to have to do today going through the budget is reflective of all of that. And I think, what we're hoping for is that we'll be able to use our non-lapsing budget in January, and we'll potentially have new funding available in January, although that seems overly optimistic at this point. But yeah.
All right,
So
appreciate that. Senator Weiler, are you in a position to make some comments now?
Yes, I am. Thank you. First of all, I want to just reassure everyone, it's not like the legislature hates indigent defense and we got singled out. What happened was, as Representative Ferry said, all of the 2020 increases were netted out, and then the pandemic priorities were put back in. And, we're competing directly, the IDC, with sales tax money, we're competing directly with social services. And I think everyone would understand that during a pandemic, you don't cut unemployment, you don't cut Medicaid expenditures, most of that's federal money, but not all of it. You don't cut the Department of Health back. And so the Social Services Committee, which I happen to sit on, it was treated probably the most favorably, to the chagrin of every other sub-appropriations committee. So education came out pretty well, but we don't really compete with education because that's income tax. We were competing with social services. So legislative leadership decided, not to make significant cuts in social services, and every other sub-appropriations committee, basically took the fall because of it, including ours. So it's not that we were singled out for cuts. We just got cut with everyone else. I do believe there's a small percentage chance that we could get some funding restored for some of our anticipated funding increases restored in the August special session. Probably a 5 to 10% chance that could happen. So it's not anything that we can count on for our decisions today. But I do know that we are held in high regard among certain members of leadership, and I think that there will be an effort, depending on what our economic forecasts are, 2 months from now, or 6 weeks from now. So with that, we passed about 24 bills. I'm just going to email out a summary to the committee in writing, just a short summary of those bills, so as to not take up the time right now. But none of them directly impact indigent defense.
Thank you, Senator Weiler. Appreciate your comments. And if there's anything that we can do for the next session 6 weeks from now, please let us know so that we can try and advance the ball for our commission. Okay?
Absolutely.
All right, Joanna, item number 4 on the agenda, defender data. What can you tell us?
Sam, before we do that, can we just make sure we have had some additional commissioners join, and then there's some people on the phone who I'm not sure who they are. All right, Sam, are you the 801-550 number?
Oh, mine's 521-9000.
Okay, who
The
is?
550 number is,
Heather Shriver.
That's Heather, is 50?
Yes.
Okay. And then the 435 number? 435-248. I'm gonna remove you if you don't identify yourself. Please identify yourself. All right. Sorry, it is a challenge to control and juggle Zoom while trying to run a meeting. Okay, I have put the unknown number into a waiting room. They can message me if they want to come back in. All right, Defender data. So one of the things that remained from the legislative session was a mandate to collect data, right? Prosecutors, several mandates to collect data, the courts, and we also did. And with the benefit of JAG funding, we have a grant to fund Defender data. We chose Defender data because they went through an RFP process, I think over a year ago, to be on state cooperative contract. So they got on that process. So that means that we can fund it and then get reimbursed with the JAG funding. And Representative Ferry, I think, said it best in, I think, last meeting or the meeting before, just that we need to hold strong on this collection of data and information, because that's the best single way that we can help explain and justify what we're doing and the need for additional funding and funding period. And so at this point, we have all of our grant applicants agreeing to use Defender data. Leslie and Greg have been champions in getting experienced with Defender data and figuring out how to help roll it out so that we get consistent and relatively uniform reporting from that, because without that consistency, it's not going to be helpful. But I also want to thank all of our grant applicants who are on here. I know a lot of you have worked really hard to get up to speed in Defender data, and I know it hasn't been easy, and I understand that, but we appreciate your efforts there. I see a bunch of you from Weaver to everywhere around the state who's been doing that, and I really appreciate those efforts. And I know it's a pain, and I appreciate you you getting that up and running. So thank you. And because you are doing that, that has helped you in your ranking in this grant application process. So it is not without meaning. That's all I have for Defender data. I can move myself on to Gunnison update, Sam, if you'd like.
Please. Thank you.
Yep. So in the 2020 session, we also are now administering the Gunnison Inmate Indigent Defense Fund. That is Sanpete County money, because when Sanpete County got Gunnison Prison, they agreed to pay for indigent defense, and that statute caps the fund at $1 million, and then previously had the Division of Finance do it, and now we are doing it. When we took it over, we had to go through an RFP process to get a list of approved vendors that we could contract with state money, and we now have that in place, and we have 9 defenders on that list. As soon as we got them in place, I assigned 28 cases. We had a bunch of backlog and a bunch of new cases that were coming in. There's some really interesting issues in Gunnison Prison that are a little different from Draper. There's a baseline similarity between inmate issues, but Gunnison has changed over the years. I think, when I was an appellate defender, it was all my low-level clients who were in Gunnison Prison, and now it's not the case anymore, because those low-level clients are out and released. So Gunnison has seen a shift in its population, and we've had some interesting conversations with corrections about that. So I think it'll be very interesting to monitor and look at the work these defenders are doing, and they are at this point reporting to me because we don't have any additional funding for administrative costs. So we're working very closely with them. And I think it'll be a really interesting program for us to look at and get data from. Any questions, thoughts? We're still looking for Rule 8 qualified people. We currently don't have Rule 8 qualified people on our list. There are 2 capital cases that are pending, and they are being handled by attorneys still through the Division of Finance. But we will reopen the list to get those Rule 8 qualified people, but there are not very many of them. Mary, and I think you're the only one on this meeting. Rich, you would be if you were still practicing. Kim also, but there's really only.
Isn't Wally Rule 8 qualified? Oh.
Oh,
So that tells you, right? Someone with Wally Bugden's experience is not qualified because you have to have a particular desire to take on capital cases and to get experience doing them. And there really aren't the people in the state who are in that position. So we're going to reopen the RFP and ask for teams of 2 so that we can get one Rule 8 qualified person and one partner who has significant experience. And the hope is that then that second chair will be able to gain Rule 8 experience, because for the moment, while we still have the death penalty on the books, you need more attorneys for this. So that's what I'm Gunnison. Yep.
So this is Senator Weiler. I'm concerned with your statement that you are taking this on because we don't have funding. So I think it's very important for us as a board to know what additional responsibilities you're taking on this summer so that we can monitor that. I'd rather you let us know if you're overwhelmed rather than just looking for another job or something like that. So I think it's important that I know you already had a stressful and full plate, so I just want you to keep us in the loop as to how much more you're taking on because of these funding cuts.
I appreciate that. I did not say that for a sympathy plug. I said it because it is, it's work. And Kim has been very helpful and Katrina has been incredibly helpful. So I'm not alone out there doing it. So I don't mean to whine about it. I asked for this and I think it's really important work and I welcome it. I think right now we've been given a lot of mandates that we asked for and that we should be responsible for without the additional funding. So we are, Katrina and I are tracking our time on Gunnison, our hours that we work on that. And so we will be able to tell you exactly how much time it's taking and, additional work it's requiring. Any other thoughts or questions?
I don't think.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, if to the degree that we can manage to do it, because we did seek a reorganization of these services to make them have more integrity to the way they're handled statewide. It should give us arguing points when the next time there's any money on the table to support the tasks we've undertaken without the funding that was originally allocated for it. So I'm entirely with the senator that if you're feeling you're overstressed, we need to know that. On the other hand, I think from the mission standpoint, I want to really appreciate your doing this because it is one of those things that we sought last year, and I think it's important that we take this on.
Can you keep track of the time that you allocate to this new responsibility that you've taken on?
Yep, I am. Katrina and I are tracking our hours. So, yep.
Can I ask you a question here? Real quick. You said that there was San Pete County's providing $1 million a year towards that. Was the defense of the prisoners in Gunnison?
The fund is capped at $1 million, so they have to top it off annually to keep it at $1 million.
So it's more like a trust fund, like a bond or so it's not $1 million annually that's applied toward. Okay, because the question would be, can you not take your hours and receive have money brought back in from that fund into the IDC to help compensate for that, so that it's not just a kind of giving that away to those prisoners or to that fund, I guess would be the more appropriate term. So is that something that can be done or not to recoup some of those costs?
The statute does say that we can use administrative funding or use it for administrative funding. I think I don't want to do that until I track some time and get an idea of it, because I would hate for that to be the reason why the fund goes down. I don't know that it's fair for me to track my time. We might take Katrina's time out of that because she's doing some of the day-to-day things, but yeah, I'll definitely look at that, and I'll work with Lana, our AG, on how we do that, and with Kim on the funding for it. I think it's a good question.
Because it might be an opportunity to bring some of that funding in to help offset some of the, you know, the employee cost in your department. So.
All right, any further comments on Gunnison? If not, thank you very much for the update, and please keep track of your time so that the commission can see what is really happening and how much it's taking of your time as well. Okay, item number 6 on the agenda is really the reason why we are together today. And this is the grant award discussion, any motions to go along with it, votes, and any public comment. There are a couple of things that I want to say before we launch into this. Number one, I want to thank Joanna and her staff, particularly Greg, for all the work that has gone into looking at this new budget plan and how it's been instituted. I guess this is the first time that we have used it. And I hope that you all got an opportunity to look at the spreadsheets that were sent to us that actually rank the grants, and based on a system that was thought out by Greg and others. And I guess this is the first year that we apply it. And I just want to make sure that we have all had an opportunity to do that. There are a couple of ways that we can address these grants. There are certain recommendations that are made in those sheets, in those spreadsheets. We can go through each grant individually. We can go through the grants all together and just make a motion regarding the recommendations from the staff at the commission. I do want to give, I know some of the grantees are online, and I would like to make, when we are considering your grants, give you an opportunity to make a statement if you wish. I'm going to try and limit that. Let's make sure that it stays at least about 2 minutes, no more than that. And but we do want to hear from you concerning these issues. So any discussion about how we want to proceed with this?
This is Michael Zimmerman, Sam. I wonder whether we could presume that the sheet with the cuts in it is where we would be going, and then ask people if they have comments about specific proposals that they would like reconsidered, or if we have people here who are applicants that they can speak to the changes that are suggested that they would like to sort of get us to reconsider. That might be the most efficient way to move through it.
And Michael, I think that's a good idea, except that I think we need to make some specific motions, and we should go through the whole chart before we do that, because many of the people online have not seen it before. They're looking at my screen right now, right? So they
sure
have the opportunity to react to it. And I think once we go through it, then you can figure out if you want to make individual motions or global motions. Does that sound like a good way to run through it?
Yeah, I was just suggesting that those things that nobody raises, we can address by a blanket motion. Does that make sense, or does that not fit the protocols you think we need to follow?
No, that makes sense, because I actually would like to streamline this process as much as we can. And there's a lot of information in the spreadsheets. I know the page that you have up there, that's at the bottom of the list of the grant applications. And maybe those would be the ones that will have the most comment to be made. So maybe we can start there and let's just go up and see where we end up with it. Does
Okay.
that sound all right?
Yep.
So we'll start with Vernal.
Well, look, I started at the bottom to talk about the overall numbers, which I think are important. And then, Sam, if you let me just walk through things really quickly, and then I'll turn it back to you. Is that okay?
That'll be fine.
Okay. So you're looking at my screen, and there's a bunch of numbers, but everyone on the commission has this in the materials. So if you start at the bottom and move over to the funds available, to the column, the request amount, we have 7.8 million, over 7.8 million in both necessary expenditures and grant requests. I'm gonna make sure Greg is admitting people in the waiting room. Sorry, I'm still trying to manage Zoom. Okay, so we start with the bottom, which are the expenditures that sort of adhere to our office. The appellate office was initially recommended to have 1.5 million in funding, and we have scaled that back to 180,000 for Deborah to work with contractors. She is doing an RFP for that, and they will be continuing the appellate program that we did with Utah County. Moving up to IDC operations, that's my staff budget. We have scaled back all travel, basically everything except salaries and the rent we're paying, and a very minimal amount for the training program that we're continuing to do as you go up. And then the contested adoption is SB 203 and our mandate to reimburse counties for those expenses. We have tried to still put funding toward that, but we have definitely reduced it, and we will make grantees aware that we don't have the same amount of funding available for that. And then the top item, the wrap up, we are contractually obligated with Utah County to pay for the full scope of the appeals that came through that program. And so that is the amount that is left to pay it for that program. I don't know that we will expend it all, but that is what we are obligated to pay. So that's why you see the green on those numbers. Then moving up, we get into the grant requests. And yes, we are starting at the bottom. And this table was made because IDC commissioners were given all of the grant applications, and each grant application got between 2 and 3 commissioners voting on it, reviewing it, and giving us their opinion. And so you'll see let me scroll over there, this left side, let me get my spotlight tool, there we go. This left side over here, these are the scores the grant applications received from commissioners. So that's what we mean when we say we're starting at the bottom. As we start at the bottom, you see that one thing that in the motions you've seen that we've asked to deny all new fiscal year 21 requests and all new increases, and then everything that is not related to people. So when you see those zeros in there, that's what the zeros are. As we roll up the screen, it continues with cuts everywhere. It's not much happier. As you move up in the ranking, you get a little bit less cut. I'll ask Greg to walk through Nephi and Juab in just a second. If you remember, we still have existing contracts with Nephi and Juab because early on we gave them 3-year contracts when we were trying to get this program up and running. So that 100% there is reflective of that existing contract, and then the new obligations that we would pay for them. If you see reductions that look more severe as you move up the chart, like this 50% for Salt Lake County, those usually have an explanation behind them, which we can walk through. Either the grantee has proposed that, or we have some other funding available for that. And then as you walk up the chart, you can just see that it is, so let's take Utah County for a moment. It looks rather random, but what Utah County has done is given us propositions for cutting to save different things. So we've done a combination of about a 10% reduction plus their cuts on Utah County. Same issue with Juab County's existing contract. And then, with the top ranked county, we really left the contracts untouched and just took the mileage and the administrative support budget. So this was labored over by everyone on our staff, and I didn't know a better way to do it. And that's what we came up with. And in large part, it was your commission evaluation and review that allowed us to do this. So I want to say thank you very much for doing your annual homework. And I know it is hard and can be off-putting, especially if you're not an attorney, because it's a lot of information to review, but your comments and your recommendations were critical to getting this chart where we can fund pretty much everyone to some degree. So that's what I have to say about the chart. And then Sam, I'll leave it to you to figure out the motions.
Thanks. Michael, you had a suggestion a few minutes ago about making a motion to the effect that we accept the staff recommendations as presented in the chart, or something to that effect. Is there some way that you can articulate that?
I guess my suggestion would be that we accept the staff recommendations in the chart, but before we vote on that, we ask for comment from anyone in the audience or from any commissioner who wants to question. I mean, maybe the way to do it is make that motion and then put it up for discussion and let people target specific ones. Does that make sense? Is that a sensible way to proceed?
If there's a general overall motion that the commission accept the staff's recommendations in these charts, we can do that. If there's a second, then I'll call the question for discussion, and during that discussion period, we can address the individual items.
That's the motion I would make.
Is there a second?
Margaret
Are
Lindsay.
they all muted?
Hi, Margaret. You're talking. Go ahead, Margaret.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Now I'll ask for discussion as it relates to the specific items in the chart that has been presented. And my suggestion would be that we start at the bottom and work our way up. Any questions about Vernal? Anyone want to make a comment?
So
about
Sam,
Vernal?
I don't specifically have a question, but I was curious, and I've looked at this pretty carefully. So that I understand it, the overall app score is tied to the percentage of cuts. Is that how that was done, based upon the ranking? Because I mean, you could look at this, I would suppose, and say, well, you know, we think that somebody from Washington County might say, we think that our specialty court contract is a pretty important contract, but yet it looks like a 60% cut. Is that based upon the overall applicant score? And if so, how is that tied to a percentage?
I can handle that, Rich. One of the things that I didn't mention we considered is we reached out to all grantees and asked them to both rank their grant priorities and then again to trim things beyond that. And we got some good feedback from grantees saying, okay, you know, we can horse trade, we can reduce here and cut this, as long as we get this funded, we'll be okay. And so some of that is reflective here at the bottom of the chart, less so. Washington County specifically, we did not get that feedback. We got the ranking, but not the feedback on where to cut. And so Washington County could be one of the motions that you may want to talk about a little bit more. I will say if we move things around in this, it will affect the overall motion, but I think Greg can track that as we do it. So yes, Rich, it was tied to the percentage of the cut, but it is also based on other feedback and other variables. I would say it is quasi-scientific at best.
Joanna, this is Mike Drexel. Was that feedback and ranking that you just described with the applicants done after or before the commissioners reviewed the grant proposals?
I think it was done after. You'll see it here in this column.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I asked them again the early last week before we heard from EAC when we knew what EAC was going to do. Yeah, so it's definitely after.
Okay.
But I will say, you know,
Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay. So does anyone have any comments on Vernal? No comments? Okay, let's go to the next one. Kane County. Any comments on that?
Sam, can I ask, this is Mike
No.
Drexel again. Are you also looking to see if there's comments from the public, or is this just from the commission?
No, I'm starting with the commission, but if anyone is here on behalf of the grantees, I would like to hear from them at this point as well.
and I would say if grantees would talk, show me your video and raise your hand and I'll just call on you. But if you don't, then we will move on.
Okay, and it's Price City, is that correct?
Yep. And I see Nick.
Anyone?
I had to get unmuted. This is
All
Nick
right.
Cowton from Price City. I'd just like to say thank you. Any help that we can have really means a lot to us, and we're doing our best to keep up with all of our obligations.
Appreciate the comment. Anyone else? Any commissioners? No, then let's go on to Washington County.
Hey,
Any
Sam.
comments on this?
Sam,
Yes.
Shane, you're on. Did you want to talk about Kane at all? You can shake your head or just talk.
So I put in the proposal for Kane County. It was in an effort to start to regionalize our area down here. It was a fairly small ask. We understand with the cuts that everything's not going to be funded, and so that was just the hope with Kane County was to start to regionalize with Iron County, but I don't have anything else to comment on with Kane.
All right, appreciate that, Shane. Thank you.
And if we,
all right, let's go up.
I was just going to say that if we had done individual motions, they wouldn't be flat no's. They would be no's with specific encouragements to improve applications to continue those efforts. The problem with Kane was also that it was our only new applicant.
I looked at the Kane County proposal, this is Michael, and I was encouraged that you were making an effort towards regionalization. I'm just sorry about the inability to fund it. So please come back.
And in terms of Price, we already heard from Price. I looked at that one, and I do see that they are getting some amount, though it was a reduced amount. Okay, let's go up to Washington County. Any comments from commissioners on Washington County? Anyone from Washington County who wishes to make a comment at this point? Joanna, you see anyone? No?
I do not.
All right, then let's go up to Tooele. Any comments from Tooele?
Did we lose you, Sean?
No, you didn't lose me. I was just signaling that I think it's great given the circumstances. I like the others before, understand the challenging situation we're all in, and just grateful for being able to be a part of the program.
Yeah, the cuts reflected there. I mean, that's just part of where we ended up. Okay, thank you very much. The next one up is Wayne County. Any comments on Wayne? Anyone from Wayne County?
This is Johanna Williams. I'm the managing public defender for Wayne County. I had a question. When we got our grant last year, the county funding was on a variable basis. It was on an as-built basis. I'm okay with these cuts. We knew these cuts were coming. The county is okay with these cuts. We're happy with the money we are getting. I'm just wondering if anybody could tell me what the decision was as far as the $18,000 for our justice court public defender, because we had asked that that just be a flat fee instead of a variable fee.
So Johanna, I think it was simply that we didn't, in awarding this, so you're talking about this 20,000?
No, it's not listed here. It's not money coming from the IDC, it's money coming from the county, but the way our grant was written last year, we had to do it on an as-built basis. I had asked, because I knew these cuts were coming, if we could just have a flat fee in order to keep the person that it took us 10 months to get.
And that is not listed on here for under Wayne County?
So it's a county funded line item?
It's a county funded line item, but the way we were awarded our grant last year, it wasn't a flat fee. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was.
Join the meeting.
They had to bill the county, and then the county reimbursed them. It was weird. I'm just wondering if that's something that you guys could look at and just let me know going forward. I'm okay with these cuts. I'm also okay with the cuts in Sevier County. We knew they were coming. We understand, and we're happy and grateful for the money we are getting.
But Johanna, sorry for the confusion, but I think if it's on the county side, this does not reflect county funding. This is purely IDC funded items. And there's always been a little confusion around the Wayne and Sevier grants. And if there's some confusion in here that we need to change numbers for, then we need a specific, if we've done something wrong in listing it, then in this chart, tell me exactly what we need to do differently with it.
I guess it would be something that you and I would probably need to talk to each other outside of this, because it's not part of the money we're requesting.
So then
okay, then that conversation can take place after this one, okay? I appreciate you bringing it up though, because that is a unique way of funding it, so. All right, let's
Can
go
I ask
up.
can I ask a clarifying question just before we move on from that?
Sure.
Sam, is the Wayne County funding tied in any way to these IDC grant monies, Johanna? In other words, if these IDC grants are not at a certain level, will it affect the county's portion of defense budget?
It will affect it significantly. The county portion, the amount of money they have total is $18,000. The way the grant was written is that $18,000 was specifically specified for our justice court and conflict contract. So that's money not coming from the IDC. All of the other funding, our district court, our juvenile court, our managing public defender, our administrative assistant, all of that other funding comes from the IDC. Wayne County was one of the most significantly underfunded counties in the state prior to IDC involvement.
And so I guess just to ask my question slightly differently, just to make sure I understand. The $20,000 that Joanna was just indicating for the primary district with justice court conflict contract that is proposed to be funded at 80% for a total of $16,000. If that reduction here is made, does that change what Wayne County intends to do with its portion of the budget? Or will there still be $18,000 available from Wayne County funds?
The $18,000 will still be available. The $18,000 is there no matter what. I don't know if the county has the funds available to meet that additional cut.
To offset that, right?
There is a possibility that we will just have to take that money and offer that to our contracted public defender and hope that he'll take it. I don't know.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you so much.
And if that was Johanna, if that was part of a condition in our grant agreement with you last year, that is definitely something we can negotiate and work on, since it doesn't affect our underlying funding. So I don't think you need to worry about that. I think we can definitely work with that now that I understand the issue better.
Yeah, that was my only concern. We understand the difficult decisions that have had to be made, and the county and the commissioners and I are very grateful for the money we do get.
Thank you very much for your comments, Johanna. All right, let's go on up. Sevier County. Any comments?
I have nothing additional to add for Sevier County. Again, we are thankful and we're grateful that the cuts weren't more significant.
Well, let's hope that we have a better year next year. We'll just wait and see what happens. All right, going up the chart, Cache and Rich County. Any comments? Anyone from those counties?
I don't see anyone from the county, but this one was a bummer. And not that they're not all a bummer, but Cache County is really was thoughtful in their application about the things they needed to strategize with Rich and Cache and to develop some of their local infrastructure. And we had really encouraged them to do that. And they took and back in January, they did that. And I am not at all saying that they're any worse than or better than anyone else, but this one, you can see, you know, what they really put into. They were trying to get a managing defender with paralegal help. Social worker was their additional or their continued funding. But anyway, just a note, I'll mute myself again.
Thank you. Summit County.
Is it all right?
Any comments?
I would like to speak if that's okay. I wanted to wait till after the commissioners had a chance.
I think you're good, Jana. Just
I don't hear any questions, Jana, so go ahead.
Oh, hello, everyone. I know many of you, but some of you I don't. I'm Jana Young. I'm the Deputy County Manager for Summit County. I also know I have one of our public defenders on the call as well. And then I think I saw Alex Peterson, who's part of our selection committee, and they may want to say a few things too. I wanted to start out first and just thank the staff and the commission for your review of all of this and the best that you're doing to try to fund all these requests in these tight budget, this tight budget climate due to the pandemic. Our grant, so we've been a grantee with the IDC for the past 2 fiscal years, and we've seen a lot of benefits from the funding. The primary change we made was regarding specialization and effective representation, which, as you know, are 2 of the core IDC principles. I think it's 5 and 8. I have Sophia Moore on the call. She is our public defender for juvenile delinquency cases, and the grant specifically has allowed us to separate out that contract. Prior to the funding, generally our primary district court and justice court contracts handled those cases. And as you all know, juvenile delinquency is a very specialized and unique area of law. And so it's been a tremendous asset to our program to have Sophia managing that, you know, independently and just focusing on that. Truly a professional who has a lot of experience in this area. My only concern with the cuts, while again, I understand them and we're fine absorbing defense resources and other things in our budget, is that the grant funds her contract 100%. And as you're all experiencing, even across the country, our budget, we had to cut close to $6 million from our budget just this year, and we're expecting additional cuts in 2021. Potentially even some furloughs and layoffs. And so it is a concern for us to be able to continue funding that contract. And I'm making the assumption that maybe our county was ranked a little bit lower because we're not currently using Defender data. And I've been told we're one of the few counties that are not using that system. I wanted to assure the commission that we're in the process of setting that up. I've already requested the licenses from Greg Bates and have been working with our defenders to get set up in that. To be honest, it's been a transition for all of them who've been using their own systems for decades. And I think there was a concern about the burden of the extra data entry because we don't have administrative support. These are all sole practitioners, and the county doesn't have those resources either. But I wanted to, again, assure the commission that we're committed to moving to that system. As we understand, that's what you all prefer. And again, we're committed to providing the legislature even the data that they're requesting and making their decisions off of. And we understand the importance of that, and are confident that that system can help us get you what you need. So I wanted to make sure I express that to you all. I don't know if it changes anything. We're obviously going to do our best to continue this program. We did restructure the whole thing based on the IDC grant funding. So we are a little concerned about how to manage that structure going forward, which we think is very effective. So just a plea, you know, if there's any way to, at least that contract in particular, to increase the funding for that, would greatly appreciate it. And then I don't know if Sophia, you wanted to say anything.
I just wanted to thank the committee, this is Sophia, for their support in Summit. We're really trying hard to get these positions up and running and utilize all the resources. So thank you very much. And we will get right on board with Defender data.
And Sophia, this is Joanna. I'm just curious, some of the reasons why we felt that some trimming of contracts might be okay was simply because of COVID. And although you're still working, the work has decreased. Are you expecting an increase in your work?
Joanna, Sophia again, yes, we had a time where we didn't see a lot of cases coming through, both in Salt Lake and in Summit. We're now getting slammed. The cases are starting to filter in, the prosecutors are filing. So it is a busy time for the juvenile defenders.
And just to add to that, Sophia too has stepped in tremendously with our CJC and helping with a bunch of situations and cases coming out of that system. And as you can imagine, as I'm sure other jurisdictions have experienced, we've seen quite an increase in our cases that are coming through the CJC because of the current quarantine situation that have obviously created stress among families, and obviously have led to more cases of abuse that Sophia is also assisting with.
So the last thing I'll say is we hear all that. Tracking those hours in Defender data will help us in January come back and say, look at the caseload that these people are dealing with, and we had to cut their contracts, right, with the funding. And to be able to say specifically, we need to put back the 20% we took from Summit County's juvenile delinquency defender because this was her caseload and this is what she faced in July. So that is the only thing I can completely encourage you to do, is to document the scope of work that you're doing so that we can help you specifically access those resources again.
Before we leave this, Joanna, this is Sam. I want to hear from any commissioners, based on what you have just heard, are there any commissioners who wish to make any kind of a change to that line item, the juvenile delinquency contract for Summit County? Don't everybody speak up at once.
Sam,
all right, we will leave it at that. Hang on. We'll leave it at that, and at the end, pardon me, go ahead.
This is Mary Corporon. Certainly I want to give more based on what I've just heard, but doesn't that require also figuring out where you take it away from?
One step at a time. If in fact we decide to increase that, then the next step is, where do we make the adjustment? That would be a second step, but I wanted to find out whether there was any appetite from any of the of the commissioners at this time in light of Jana and Sophia's presentation to us.
Sam, and commissioners, you all have this tool in your materials. So if you want to make one of those motions, you have the ability to look elsewhere in the chart and find the changed the additional money elsewhere in the chart, but you definitely have to make a substitution motion if you're going to move to change money around.
Well, and if it's appropriate, we do have, did Alex Peterson, did you want to say anything too in support of Summit's?
Yeah, if this is all right, Joanna, I'd like at this time to make a comment, if that's okay.
Please.
Thank you. I would like to echo the gratitude from Summit County for this. I'm coming to this as a public member. I am a practicing attorney, but I will tell you, thanks to you, we have managed to start to professionalize the provision of defender services up in Summit County. So the money that you've provided has fueled and empowered those changes. And I get it that we're in the middle of the change, and you know, we should keep changing. Of course, that's a heck of a time to cut the funding, because the funding is what's helping us get those changes. So the professionalization of the provision of services is directly related to the funding that you all had approved in the past. And, you know, I totally understand the difficult decisions about having to decrease the funding, but know that your funding is what is driving the professionalization of services. And perhaps most importantly, is it's stabilizing the access to justice up there. You know, I mean, before it was very, and I don't want to speak poorly of the past, but it was very haphazard public defender contracts. And what you've done is you've really stabilized Summit County's ability to do that. We're seeing a lot of growth up there, you know, population wise. And so I would just, I'm afraid of seeing that trend going in the other direction. And let me just finish my brief comments by thanking you again for any funding and certainly for starting the funding for our contracts up there. Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to say something.
Thank you, Alex.
Mr. Chair, may I
All
ask
right, any
a
other
question?
comments? Yes, Pam.
This is Margaret. May I ask, request of the Summit County people that to know, number one, how many days a week or month juvenile delinquency cases are held, as well as what is the caseload, if in approximate terms that we're talking about?
This is Sophia talking. A juvenile court in Summit County is usually held on Fridays. We share our juvenile court judge with Tooele. I believe last year we had 65 cases. I'm not sure of the total count for this year so far because of the COVID, and I haven't looked at that yet, but I am working on it for my report.
It's important work, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
We're very, very lucky to have Sophia. We want to retain her.
This is Pam. I don't have a motion exact. I'm looking at all of the money stuff, but I do just want to say that in my mind, Summit is really one of the only county that has really completely separated out delinquency and recognized it for its specialty. I mean, Salt Lake County has always done that, but Summit is the only county of all, even though this is one of the core principles for the IDC, is the separating out delinquency and child welfare, as well as from district court. And so that was a huge step. And I think, so it's of significant importance to me, I guess is my point.
This is Joanna. Jana, I have a question for you also. I'm trying to work with Greg via text. He's 2 rooms away, but I won't go over there and just ask him. But he is looking at the reasons why Summit scored relatively low with commissioners. And one of those reasons, I think, was that you didn't fully spend your budget last year. Is there anything in there that you can look at to make up this difference for the moment?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do that, obviously, because we have to. We're not gonna, I mean, we're gonna do whatever we can to keep our juvenile contract. I think that the extra budget is related to a reduction in our conflict hours. And then our defense resources weren't utilized as much as we've budgeted for in the past. But I mean, yeah, certainly we would have to look at that. And I can't tell you based on, because those things are driven by the caseload and whatever the situation of that case is, it's hard to anticipate what dollars we'll be spending on that this year. Certainly we'll be able to finish out the year, and then we'll have to look again at our budget in 2021, but I can't even guarantee that we'll get the same base budget in 2021 because there's just so much uncertainty in, I mean, we're looking at even 2017 levels right now with our budget. So it's hard to predict. We have no idea how to even approach our next fiscal year. So, but yeah, I mean, we would do whatever we could to try to make it work. But again, I don't know where this ranks in priority of, you know, road projects and public health and all the other county functions.
And Sam?
Yes.
This is Laureen Kamalu from Commissioner at Davis County, and commissioners all over the state get to know each other and each other's counties somewhat. I do know that Summit was hit particularly hard with the pandemic, and with no doubt much of their budget very reliant on tourism, and the uncertainty even moving forward with tourism and the recovery, that is certainly something to be considered. Not all counties have been hit equally by the pandemic, and Summit very much stands out with what I know about their experience.
Appreciate the comment. I think we all realized that that was a hotbed for the pandemic when it started. They've made great strides, but I do understand the impact, the economic impact that it has brought to the county. All right, let's go back to my question to the commissioners. If we need a motion to change Summit, especially on the one line item, then we need to make sure that we have a substitute from somewhere else to think.
Mr. Chairman, Margaret Lindsay would like to make a motion that we consider small cuts. Mr. Chairman, Margaret, consider small cuts to the juvenile contract in Millard County to partially compensate for the decrease in Summit.
This is Mike. I'd like to second Margaret's motion.
Just to add some, Utah County administers the grants and the systems in Millard and Juab and Sanpete County, as the commission is aware. I had our stats reported to me on the juvenile numbers this week for most of the year to this date. With court there twice a month, as well as with the caseloads, I think since we are having to cut across the board, that would be a place where we could look at some small cuts and to help partially compensate at least for Summit's loss, because I think we do recognize that Summit County was hit especially hard during the early months in the winter of this pandemic, and I think that's a place where we could do it and still meet the needs in Millard County sufficiently.
Margaret, as the seconder of your motion, do you have a number?
Yeah, so let me help you with the number that you're looking at, Margaret, just to be specific. So the amount cut from Sophia's contract is $8,000. the amount cut from the justice court contract is 4,000. So that's what you're looking to make up. And then here is your.
Right. So is Joanna, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Millard contracts are, at least on the juvenile side, is that we have two primary child welfare contracts and then one delinquency contract.
I believe that is correct. Yes.
And so my proposal would be that we cut 2,000 from each of the child welfare contracts, and then either 1,000 or 2,000 from the delinquency contract. The delinquency has been fairly quiet. I don't know that we've yet seen the ramp up in the 4th district that is being reported in the 3rd. So I would say, at least 1, if not 2, from the delinquency side as well. And look, none of this is fun. I don't like it. I'm not going to I would talk to the attorneys about it, but that is a place where I think with court only twice a month, and actually with right now, nobody having the travel time of going from, to Millard County, that is a place that we can cut.
So Margaret, if I'm not mistaken, your motion is to move 6,000 to 8,000 from Millard to Summit. Can you be specific on the amount? No, sorry, 5,000 to 6,000.
Yeah, my motion will be 6,000.
6,000 from Millard to Summit County.
I'll second that motion.
It's going to need a second motion, or after, do you want to say specifically where it's going? There.
I think the motion, as I understood, Margaret, that I'm seconding is takes 6,000 from Millard and put it into Summit County for the juvenile
delinquency. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We are
Mr.
ready.
Chair, can we have some
numbers?
discussion to the motion?
Sure.
So I respect Margaret a lot, and I think she really understands how things are operating because of the unique situation and relationship between Utah County and Millard and Juab. And so I think the motion is probably really well taken. I wonder, though, if before voting on the motion, it would be worth reviewing the Millard County application and grant situation, hear from anyone from Millard County that may want to speak, from the grantee requesting entities, and then kind of absorb their feedback before taking a final vote on the motion.
So we could take that as a tentative change and move through the rest of the budget. Would that make sense, Margaret? And then once we've finished, then this could be one potential change in the proposal, and we just keep going and we see if there are any others.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Does that work for you, Michael?
Yeah, it does. And I appreciate that very much. I think once we get a full picture of the rest of the grant applications and where things land, it may make sense to explore possible other sources than reducing an existing contract in a rural area of the state. Maybe there are other places that make more sense. I don't know. So.
Okay.
And I will just remind everyone that we will definitely be coming back in January to revisit. Whether we use our non-lapsing money or not, we will have to come back in January and talk about these grants and what the funding situation is there also. Not discouraging any motions. I think they're very valid and we should do this, but that we will have to go through this again also in January. So I'm keeping a list of the motions. I have Margaret's motion ready to queue up, and maybe we can go through them at the end. Everybody remember the motion, and I will remind you of it, and then I'll do a roll call vote on each motion that comes up as we go through these.
Okay.
Everyone's nodding, so that's what I'm going to do. Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Did we lose you, Sam?
Sammy may be on mute.
He is.
I've lost the, I'll work on this while he figures that out. So we are Sevier Wayne Cash Rich Summit. We are up to Weber County. I see Mike Bowis on the call.
All right, I'm on now. Weber County. Any comments on Weber?
I do, but I'll wait till the commissioners have spoken.
I think you're up, Mike.
Okay, thanks. I'll be quick.
Yep.
I just echo comments made by others. We're grateful to have any money. The money that we receive from IDC, I think, has contributed to a little bit of a change in the culture here in Weber County, the relationship between the defenders and the county commission. And so we appreciate that. My sole question has to do with the possibility of reallocating money that's proposed to be granted for the specialty attorneys to the defender contract. The specialty attorneys are paid hourly, as is the administrative assistant. Having someone take over one of the calendars for the coordinator, that's not paid hourly, that's just a flat salary. And so just asking if there's a possibility to reallocate some of the money that's proposed for the specialty attorneys to that contract. So I'm not sure.
So I'm going to let Greg talk about that, Mike. Greg, can you unmute yourself? Because Greg, I think, knows the most about this particular.
Yes, yeah. I don't see an issue with doing that if that's the county's preference.
But Mike, can you be specific on the amounts that you're talking about?
Okay, so our requested amount on the defender contract was $32,467. It was tentatively approved at 80% of that. That amount is actually targeted toward a specific attorney in our group who is one of our youngest attorneys, and that's based on the pay structure we assigned. That's based on years in practice. So if we don't have the full amount on that, and the county commission's not willing to make that difference up, we simply can't do that item. And so we're just asking for the possibility of reallocating some of the amount, the $70,000 on the specialty attorneys, to make up the difference on that number 2 item for the defender contract.
So essentially the 2 line items together have been proposed at $95,973.60. At that request, I could adjust the district defender contract to 100% at $32,467, and the remaining balance to the difficult case attorneys contracts.
That's the request.
All right. And I think that doesn't need a motion because we're still looking at this unless someone thinks it needs a motion. Greg, can you type that in just so we can see it? And then then commissioners can decide what to do.
Yes, it'll take just a moment for the math, but I will do that.
This chart is very helpful that Greg has developed, but it does require you to remember percentages and how to do equations with percentages, which luckily my 10-year-old is also working on. So I have had extra practice doing percentages, but I will leave it to Greg to do the math gymnastics. So this is not changing the amount Weber is increasing, it is reallocating the contract. So this is something we tried to do ahead of time, and I will fully acknowledge that we may have missed the mark. So I actually appreciate this comment by Mike because we want to get this right. We don't want to have to come back to the IDC later and say, we messed something up and we need to reallocate.
And Sam, this is Lorraine Kamalo. May I also interact with Mike Bowis a little bit?
Please.
Yeah. So Mike, thanks so much for speaking up. And you have 2 of your 3 commissioners who are newer. They've been in office for 1.5 years. Do you feel like with the newer composition of your commission that they might prioritize a little more and more for the legal defender program?
It's hard to say specifically what they'll do, but I do know that there's a little different tone, and I don't want to speak negatively of prior commissioners, but I think it's a combination of having those two individuals on the commission and then receiving assistance from the IDC. In the past, there's been some resistance on the part of Weber County to utilize outside funds. They didn't want other people telling us how to run our business. But so I think there is. I just don't know on this particular, I don't know if your question goes to whether or not they would just on their own fund the difference. And I don't know that.
Yeah, and that wasn't specifically my question, but sometimes when commissioners are newer, they just haven't been able to get so familiar with the programs and how things are and the opportunities for progress. So anyway.
I will say in one of our budget meetings, while those two newer ones were on board with the discussion on a particular subject, the other commissioner had his head down and was shaking it. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that meant, but so anyway, we're headed in a good direction, but hard to know what that means in the future.
Yeah, right. Well, good luck continuing to educate them.
Thank you.
Greg, have you done it?
Yes, it's updated.
All right. Then let's go on to Nephi. And the recommendation is to cancel the remaining contract. And then explain that, Joanna. What are we doing here? Or Greg?
I'll explain this one. So with Nephi and Juab, they're the only two grants that were not shifted to a one-year cycle last year. They still had some multi-year grant time left. And so these two grants are currently scheduled to run through December 31 of 2020. And both grants include defense resources and mileage. The proposal here would be to essentially cancel the two contracts that are currently existing and reissue a new one-year contract to each to put them on the same cycle with the other grants. And that would cover only attorney funds and as shown, leave out the defense resources, mileage, and administrative funds.
Okay, with that explanation, is there any other comments from any commissioner?
So this is dependent. I just want to say one more clarification. We will have to give Nephi City and also Juab, if we do this, 30 days notice. And so there may be some overlap in funding. And if they don't want to terminate their existing contract, we'll have to talk to Lana about that. But it does depend a little bit on their agreeing to renegotiate a new contract, which I have no doubt they will work with us on.
All right. Anything further on that one? If not, let's get to Salt Lake. Anyone here, commissioners, to talk about Salt Lake?
Well, Sam, I can talk about Salt Lake simply because it's money that goes to my office, less as a commissioner, since I would abstain from any vote on this. But those positions are critical to our office. I mean, the first position, which is the high utilizer position, was originally ORG. And what we determined and discovered as a result of that is there are a large number of people. The high utilizer person are a number of people that continually get arrested. They suffer from mental illness and substance use disorders, and they create a high degree of caseload within our office, and they're critical positions. A lot of these are in Salt Lake City Justice Court. Some of these are in the district court. They're a completely useful and helpful group of lawyers that we have. Those lawyers, even with the 4 that we have, which are high utilizers in first appearance, and I'll talk about first appearance in a minute, without those lawyers, their caseloads right now are bordering around 459 cases, new cases per year per lawyer. And even under the guidelines of the antiquated 1973 guidelines, that's still 59 cases over what would be recommended. Certainly misdemeanor cases today are much more complex and difficult than they were in 1973. So those are important positions for us. The first appearance lawyers are equally helpful to us, and they will become more critical, particularly as we get closer to the implementation of House Bill 206. And for those of you that don't know what House Bill 206 is, there will be a requirement now on the part of district court judges to set a reasonable bail early in the process. Our early involvement with people at arraignment court and first appearance court has been critical. We have gotten a number of people released from jail. We've assisted people, we've educated them, we've helped them. We provided that data to the IDC. We were hoping to be able to expand that program. Clearly, we weren't able to do that, understanding where we are with budget cuts. But certainly, all four of those positions are absolutely critical for us. Without them, we would be providing much less and much less robust services, and the caseloads of our lawyers would explode exponentially.
Mr. Chair, can I add one item here as well?
Sure.
So with these two first appearance and two high utilizer attorneys, you see the percentage multiplier there's 81.93%. I just wanted to add why that number is so random, I guess. So essentially these two requests were an increase over last year's amount. So if you see in column B, it says increase there. What was actually done on these was to reduce them to the FY20 request amount, and then to reduce that FY20 amount by 10%. So it's not actually a reduction of the 18%, it's a reduction of 10% from last year's contract.
Chair, I see it too. As Joanna said, we're going to be reviewing these in June. This is Leslie, the data and research analyst at the IDC. And so, Rich, the more specific you can get on that CAFA data as you submit it to us definitely helps us make that case for how important this work is. Because a lot of the data I get from the courts isn't quite accurate for various reasons. And so if we can have that counsel at first appearance data pretty specifically from your office, it really helps us make that exact same argument for why this is so important.
Rich, can I ask, because I just don't know, what is your capacity within your existing budget to handle the proposed cuts that are on the spreadsheet?
Well, I think I certainly think we will try to absorb those. I mean that, you know, to echo back what I think it was Jana Young was saying. I mean, we just don't know at this point. I mean, right now we're at a spot where all of us are going to understand there are going to be substantially less and less revenues coming in and less availability of budget. I mean, really, realistically, we're not going to get a real picture of what that will look like until mid-fall. And the reason that I say that is that I've virtually attended every one of our county council meetings since the pandemic hit. And we just don't know the real numbers yet. The real numbers are going to decide what everything is going to look like. And right now there's a lag, and the lag has been, we've had a lot of layoffs, we've had unemployment benefits paid out, but we don't have a real accurate picture yet of revenue that will be coming in and availability of revenue. And we're really not going to know that till the fall. And realistically, our county council has told us, and our mayor's office has told us, there will be a continual review of what budgets look like and what kind of revenue might be available and what sort of adjustments might need to be made. And realistically, I mean, economically, we just don't know at this point because we just don't have enough data to know where it all is going to go. Because if the economy recovers quickly enough or better, we'll be in better shape. I mean, you know, I was just looking at the data on the Tribune. There's almost 600 new cases in Utah right now. And what impact that may have on us is really an unknown. I mean, if businesses shut down again, it will set us back in terms of available budget. So I know that was a long answer to say we will try the best we can to try to fill it. And we will. I mean, we'll try to figure out what cuts we need to make. And that's something that my office is looking at, realistically on a daily basis. If ways to save money and ways to be more economical in the way that we operate.
And
can I respond to that, Joanna? I had a little bit of follow-up I wanted to explore.
Yep.
The reason it's interesting, Rich, because you have a unique perspective, especially on this sort of a request, and you've already mentioned the fact that there's a basis for you to recuse on the specific vote here for all sorts of good reasons. But from your perspective, both as an operator of the biggest indigent defense program in the state, and then as a member on the commission, can you balance out what you know about how your particular entity runs and the budget with what is being asked of the commission as a whole here with budget reductions? Does this seem like the sort of fair budget reduction? I know this puts you in a hard spot, but you have insight here that none of the rest of us do. And so for the benefit of your thinking on this as a commissioner, does this seem like a fair reduction?
You mean for Salt Lake County in general?
Yeah, I mean, in light of everything else that is on here that's in red and yellow and, something less than fully funded at the requested amount.
Well, I mean, I guess in a lot of ways you could argue that it's sort of a subjective basis, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is what, Mike, and here's why I don't know. This is what I will say. I understand and have understood now for about 3 months that we are going to be in some tough budget times. And so we've had to try to evaluate what that means. And we have to try to juggle a lot of different things. And I get that and know that. And we've been working on that process for 3 months. I mean, I don't know that I would say this is fair or unfair. I would say that it recognizes the reality of the place of where we are. And it recognizes the reality that there's an expectation that there will be budget cuts because of the nature of this sort of unprecedented world that we're living in right now. That may be a cop-out answer, but I recognize that the necessity of having to take a budget cut. That's the reality of where we are. I mean, do I like to do that? No, but I know that that as a manager of the largest public defender entity with almost 200 employees, I recognize the reality of the responsibility that I have to try to manage money the best way I can, because it is taxpayer money, and I get that. And so from my perspective, I don't know that I'd say it's fair or unfair. I'd say it's the reality of what I have to deal with on a daily basis, and it's something that I've accepted and understood and have tried to work with for the last 3 months.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Rich.
Can I just say one thing about Salt Lake County? I do think, your attorneys can't go out and get private cases the way that Sophia can in Summit, right? She's not under a contract that restricts her ability to get private work, whereas I know LDA attorneys do have that restriction. So it does impact you differently. But I will say that, again, we have non-lapsing money that we may be able to use again in January. We put these cuts in here now so that you could set expectations appropriately, but there is that chance that we will be able to re-up these contracts in January with that funding. So it is, cross those fingers and dot those I's.
Any other comments?
This is Pam. I think that that's a really important point to be talking about, because that's a huge part of what the IDC's core principle has been about too, right? Is managing caseload numbers. And so we're in situations where we're asking folks like people in Rich's office to be above caseload numbers, but then they're not, like she said, they can't increase their pay in other capacities. But we don't really know what's going on with contracts and caseload from other counties where people are able to supplement the income. And you're in a situation where you might have someone at LDA who's making substantially less than somebody else who has a contract and a private caseload.
Any other comment
I do
from
have
anyone?
one. Yeah, Sam, this is Laureen again, and just I know that those of us who reviewed the applications for Salt Lake County, we knew that there was going to be a pilot potentially there, with the original funding, and so just hopeful to see that pilot opportunity come back as our funding comes back. That's my only comment.
Mr. Chair,
Okay,
this is
thank
Sean
you.
Milne, Twill County. Sean Milne, Tooele County. I think I'm just going to echo a lot of what Rich said, and I appreciate his commentary. I feel conflicted to say this next part, but it's a little tough when I think about political realities here at home for those of us that have to go in front of the taxpayers and ask for more money. Now, personally, you know, I don't love the cuts either, like Rich said. I don't think any of us do. And I appreciate staff's recommendations on trying to cut program versus people. Really respect how tough that is. I came into my particular job, and part of what I campaigned on 7 years ago, and why I think that this is a slightly different situation as a budget officer. I had to cut 25% of our workforce. That was really tough. And so I really appreciate how staff and all of us have likely looked and weighed these applications, because it's never fun to look people in the face and tell them they don't have a job anymore. I'm, you know, in a different situation because of that. We've saved some money here at home, but we're just as dependent, you know, in some ways, because of local policy decisions on how we do our diversification of economic development and mix. 17% of our employment is also through tourism, so it's affected us. And I'm not trying to draw too much of a comparison to Summit or anybody else, but I guess I'm just venting a little bit here to say, you know, there's no perfect solution. I don't think, no matter what we do, I don't think, you know, we're going to make folks happy, but there is some personal accountability for rainy day funds and how policymakers like myself or Laureen or others will decide what is the important place to put those funds. But it's hard to, I don't know. Now at this point, I feel like I'm just rambling because I don't want to be a jerk here, but I trust the process that staff went through, and I really respect everybody's comments too. So I just know it's a tough decision no matter what we do. I guess there's nothing really, you know, substantive as a new thought there, just rambling thoughts. Sorry about that.
No, I appreciate it, Sean. I welcome everyone's comments. As I stated at the beginning of this meeting, this is not an easy one for any of us, and it raises all kinds of issues, but we are at the mercy of the amount of money that we get from the legislature, and we need to do the best we can in trying to distribute that money on to the grants that we have on board. Any other comments on Salt Lake? If not, then let's go on to Duchesne. Any comments on Duchesne? Anyone from Duchesne?
I think Lance was on before. He may not still be on. Lance is our regional manager between Uinta and Daggett and Duchesne. Duchesne did approach me about potentially pulling out of that agreement, and their grant application suggested that they wanted to do more administration on their side of it. But I don't know, so I don't know whether they will accept this award offer. I assume they would like additional help, but I don't know if they want to continue that arrangement or what their plan is, just as another note. But
okay, appreciate it. With no other comments on Duchesne, let's go on to Box Elder. Anyone on Box Elder's behalf or any comments?
I will speak for Box Elder because they have been incredibly grateful for the funding that we have given them. It has helped them reduce their caseloads and increase specialization. And they have really written me in this process a lot to talk about their needs and how IDC funding has helped. And they had really hoped to do more funding. Oh, don't know. Say that again. Okay.
There's a big echo coming through again. So it just stopped. But anyway, thank you very much. Carbon County. Any comments on Carbon? Anyone from Carbon on the line? If not, then let's go on up to Iron County. Oh, that they were all this easy. Iron County.
I'm here for Iron County. We're appreciative of the funding that we currently have. We asked for the administrative assistant because we are implementing Defender data and all the data collection here. It's been difficult, and we felt that that would help with the data collection. But I would not feel right asking for that to be funded, knowing that it would be taken from somewhere else. So I'm okay with the current numbers.
And Shane, if you, I don't know whether you've had a chance to look at this, what's on the screen, any new request has not been funded at all.
Right.
That was a decision that was made because of the monetary constraints that we find ourselves in. All right? But appreciate your comment. Thank you. All right, let's go on to the next one, is San Pete. Any comments on San Pete?
I'll just say that these attorneys drive from the Provo area, so cutting mileage for San Pete is definitely a big impact on them. That's this number.
Yep.
So it's a double dip on San Pete, really. And that's why their contract amount was, yeah, 90%, not 80.
Great, thank you. Uinta and Daggett County.
With this one, sorry, Sam, Joanna, just a little more background. We really worked with Lance and the commissioners. We had a meeting with them to go through things. They are looking at their budget to see what they can absorb. Lance and Jeannie are two of our most tremendous resources. They do a lot. They've done a lot of pioneering work with Defender data. They are our only county employees who we fund, so they are the only ones who we directly fund payroll, taxes, and benefits for. And so we went to the county and asked if they could absorb some of that. And so some of these changes really reflect the county attempting to help us bridge the gap here for a minute.
Thank you for that explanation. I wondered what had happened there. All right, any other comments on Uinta and Daggett? If not, let's go on to Utah County. Greg, do these percentages reflect the change that Margaret made before on her motion?
No, she was asking for a motion to change money from Millard, Sam, but we did work with Margaret.
Millard County, not Utah County. That's correct. Okay.
But we did also work with Utah County on these numbers. They were very willing to do
adjust.
Yeah, an adjustment. So that's why you see those variable amounts.
That's correct.
All right. Any other comments? Margaret, anything you wish to say?
No.
Or you can flick it out like Rich.
Yeah, it's a tough thing.
Yes, it is.
Are appreciative that I think that with the solutions that we, with what staff recommended, we've been able to preserve people. There's going to be some, some growing pains, loss of resources. One thing we've got going on in our office is a capital case, and that is taking up, a lot of time and a lot of attorney space. But we also recognize and understand that we're the biggest grant, and we hope that what has been suggested and what we've brainstormed is, is fair. We can make this do. For example, the line item on the parental defense attorney, which is now was 0, and that was a cut. I had a senior attorney leave, and so I think we've been able to absorb that into our budget, and then just had to make some reductions where we needed to make the reductions. But we are grateful for the partnership with the state, grateful for the relationship with the IDC. We try to work hard to forward the mission of this body and bringing forward indigent defense in all aspects around the state. So thank you to everyone.
Well, and Margaret, thank you very much. I really appreciate Utah County's ability to accommodate us as much as we can, recognizing the big issues that we have this year. But thank you very much.
I will say one thing. Doug Thompson is on the call, and if anybody has any questions about the appeals pilot program that we've worked on the last year, which is still ongoing, Doug and I have reviewed those numbers carefully, and there are still some huge cases, huge appeals on some serious convictions and juvenile and child welfare cases that are outstanding. We think we're going to be really close to that 150. In addition, we're not sure yet what the impact of some cases, some newer cases from Carbon and a few other counties. But if anybody has any questions, Doug Thompson is also on the line and could answer any of those as well.
Are there any questions from any of the commissioners?
I have a question.
If not,
sorry.
Go ahead, Pen.
I see that this social work one has a 15% cut, but then the Salt Lake social worker took it was a 50% reduction. Is that correct, Joanna, or am I misunderstanding that?
You are exactly correct, and Adam has a explanation for you on that.
So the state systems that expend money on parent defense and resources related to parent defense are entitled to reimbursement from the federal government under Medicaid. So CMS receives a request for reimbursement, and they then calculate what the amount that's reimbursable to the state entity, and therefore, in our situation, on through to the county entity. When we receive that reimbursement, there are funds that are available only for improvements to the system of parent defense. And as a result, we've looking forward to getting money back from the feds that can then be put out to counties through IDC for improvements in their system. So when we took money out of Salt Lake County, we looked ahead to the process, which we're pretty far advanced on with them, and we evaluated the total spending they spend on child welfare for parent defense, and they're going to get a substantial amount of money back, assuming we can come to a complete agreement with them. And that 50% we took from child welfare social worker, I believe, can be replaced with the reimbursement funds that we get. So that applies to Salt Lake County because they get a substantial amount of money coming back. With regard to Utah County, they spend less than Salt Lake does. Their reimbursement dollars will be fewer. We still can come back and refill that gap in Utah County, but we won't have and they won't have the same amount of reimbursement resources coming back to them. So reduce Utah County by a little bit less and Salt Lake County by the 50%, and then come back and resolve that deficit once we're completed with the process with for reimbursement. That's a lot of words.
Does that answer?
I think so. So Adam, basically what you're saying is there's like a cushion or a makeup because of the federal matching dollars.
Correct. And we're in the process of working with both Utah County and Salt Lake on this, but we're farther along with Salt Lake, and the amount of money we anticipate them getting can help to replace that. What's been taken away on that side.
I see.
Any other questions on Utah County? If not, then let's go on to Juab. And if I understand what's happening with Juab, is the same process as Nephi, is that correct?
That's correct.
Renegotiate contract?
Correct.
Okay.
I think we
Any
may want
questions
a
from
separate and special motion dedicated to that renegotiation of the contract for Nephi and for Juab, as opposed to just kind of the catch-all of proposing or adopting the proposed reductions and awards in the spreadsheet. So if it's okay, Mr. Chair, I would propose a motion on that. Is now a good time for a motion?
Let's do that, but we'll consider them as soon as we're finished with Millard.
Yep, and I'll
All the
take
motion. Joanna's taking notes on the motions. Is there a second to that, to Michael's motion?
Yeah, let me formalize the motion if I could. I guess I would move to allow the termination of Juab and Nephi's current contracts and the renegotiation of those contracts to get them on to a full fiscal year. Is that right, Joanna? Is that what we're looking to do?
Yep.
Is there any payment of expenses that might be in the interim that needs to be part of my motion, Joanna, that makes it simpler for you to administer?
Yep.
So I guess I would have the motion also include the payment of any expenses incurred between July 1st and the actual 30-day termination date, whatever that date ends up being.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll
I'm
second.
sorry,
Mr.
this is
Chair.
Michael. I'll second it. I had myself muted.
Okay, all right, then we'll take them at the end after we finish with Millard County. Any comments on Millard? We know the adjustment that has been suggested. Any other comments on Millard?
Sam, I have a comment, and I wonder if Margaret could speak to that. Those are also attorneys who are going to be very much hurt by the mileage reduction if and when courts do reopen, although I believe that's speculative at this moment. But wouldn't the Millard motion that you may double affect them because they're losing that mileage reimbursement?
That's true. I hadn't thought about that, but that is definitely true. And that one is probably the biggest mileage ask of all, given that I think most of the, well, a good portion of them are Utah County. There are a few local, but that do have that 100-mile trip. So that is very true.
Yeah, I think both of your child welfare attorneys and your juvenile delinquency attorney, both you.
That is very, very true. And, you know, now that I'm thinking through that, that's it. Yeah. That is gonna hurt. I know too with our social workers and with their cases in San Pete and Millard and Juab that we also are facing that. So
I wonder if we could, this is Mike Drexel, I wonder if we could further distribute the impact of these reductions and still maybe serve the motion that Margaret made for the Summit County juvenile delinquency contract by maybe further reducing the pay increases that had been previously in a last grant year for the Washington County contracts. There are 12 contracts that were subject to those $6,000 increase each. And there's already been an 80% reduction, or is it 60? My numbers are different on the spreadsheet that I reviewed in advance of the meeting. But I wonder if we couldn't maybe further reduce those contract increases, which I guess they're not increases now, they were increases from last grant year, but by a few $100s each, and capture the money that would provide for the funding for the juvenile delinquency contract in Summit. And Margaret, I don't know if you would consider that as a possible amendment to your motion on the issue, but.
I would, actually.
And I guess in making that suggestion of amending the motion, if there's somebody from Washington on that wants to weigh in on that, I would be certainly, as a member of the commission, certainly interested in their feedback. If Mr. Chair, if you would accommodate any feedback from them at this point.
Is there anyone from Washington County who wishes to speak?
To the extent I can speak for them, they definitely wrote about the benefits of those increases. One of the things that was missing was they did not tie it necessarily to specific improvements. And I think it's hard to gauge. And in this era where we're looking at increases, we've already, we cut them back by 50% already, Mike, on the amended or on the current version of the chart. So they are.
Yeah, I do see that now. On my version that I had reviewed prior to the meeting, it looked like they were still at 80%, something like that.
Yeah, we kept getting feedback. And if you look up here at this number, the 837, that's how tightly we have awarded all the money at this point. And so to the extent anything has changed, we were trying to put money back in to get that as close to zero as we possibly could, because any plus amount means we're over obligating our money, and any negative means that's where we are on this total. That's how close we are to having this total amount awarded.
Are there any other places from commissioners that reviewed in other places where instead of just having that fall on the Millard County, I appreciate Margaret's proposal earlier in the meeting, but I wonder if having that offset fall entirely on the Millard County contracts makes the most sense, or if there's some other place where we could explore at least some sort of offset to that.
Joanna, could you go to the carbon one again?
Sure, Pam. Pam, and you know Sophia, she does conflicts in your office too, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's the carbon grant.
Right, I'm thinking and reading at the same time.
So that amount, if you remember with carbon, they only had one attorney, and that attorney went on a senior mission, and they revamped their entire system. And so those 5 attorneys are primarily funded by us. However, the system does have some resources put towards the system, obviously.
This is Michael. I wonder whether, given that among Juab, Millard, and Utah County, given the size of the grant, that Margaret's looking for money there doesn't seem like a reasonable place to look.
All right, let me just interject here and maybe try and address this a little bit more. I've been getting some texts and some information concerning the request of funding from Summit County to compensate for that particular contract that Margaret was so willing to adjust Millard on. As I understand it, they have not used, Summit County has not used all of the money from last year in their grant that could be used to pay Sophia. If that's the case, then there's no need to make the change from Millard to Summit County, and instead keep that money, and maybe if you want to use it or reallocate it internally, Margaret, and use it for mileage for the lawyers, then that makes more sense to me. You can make that suggestion to the commission and say you just want to redistribute that money internally. And do I have that correct, Joanna? In terms of the funding?
The only thing I would say is to not encourage the reallocation of money from the awarded categories because
if that's the case, then I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Your motion?
Right. I appreciate, this is hard. It's tough on all of us. But Michael and Joanna's points are well taken about the mileage, especially that distance. And so if there was money that was unspent, then I would withdraw the motion.
Is that confirmed, Joanna?
Is that what, Sam?
Confirmed that they had money that was not spent in Summit County.
I'm unmuting Greg so he can talk about it.
So as part of the staff review for grant scoring, I looked at the scoring to date, both the system spending and the grant spending to date for each of the grantees. Basically through March 31st for the grant year. And based on that, Summit County was at about 86.25% on their system spending, on track to spend, their full obligated amount, and then their grant spending, they were about 74.78% on track. With grant funding, it would be important to note that they wouldn't be able to utilize their FY20 grant funding in the next grant year to pay. It would have to be any realized savings in their actual system side budget for indigent defense.
Well, and if I could interject, this is Jana again. We have fully spent the grant funds allocated to the contracts. What might have been unspent were monies allocated for defense resources. And I'm not certain that that's in a different line item. I'm not sure we have the flexibility to pay a contract from that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The defense resources was the grant item that was underutilized. And it's not flexible to pay for FY21 expenses.
And that's already being reduced, or I guess eliminated in our request for the next fiscal year.
Right.
But Greg, can you speak specifically to the system side spending? Because I think we're getting a little bit confused between the IDC grant spending, which has not been fully utilized in the defense resources, but the actual Summit County budget amount, is that on track to be fully exhausted by June 30th?
It was not as of March 31st. Summit County had spent approximately $192,964. And to be on track, they would have needed to spend about $31,000 higher than that.
Well, and I guys mentioned before, because of some of these unspent monies on the county side, I'm pretty certain we can fund the rest of the grant for this year, because our, the budget cycle for counties is a calendar year. Where the uncertainty is in the 2021 budget, because I'm not going to have that same budget that I was allocated this year for next year. Again, particularly because of the uncertainty of where we'll be in our sales tax projections or sales tax revenues. Certainly we'll meet any obligations we have to maintain grant funding, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to cover anything we don't get from the grant.
Sam, are you still there?
I'm here and I'm just trying to think a little bit. We're back to where we were originally when Jana and Sophia made the request.
But I think Margaret withdrew her motion, so I'm not.
She did. She did. So we're still back to what do we do to try and remedy the situation in Summit County? Right? And in order to do that, it has to come out from another line item somewhere in this chart.
Also, as a reminder, we can come back in January and we may have additional funding at that point. So if you think about this as a year contract, that she won't necessarily experience the 20% decrease over the next 6 months. Sure, the amount may be less per month, but it may be made up in the subsequent 6 months if COVID vanishes.
Chair, this is Ryan. May I ask a question?
Absolutely, Ryan.
Joanna, could we, instead of splitting it over a year, could we fund the first 6 months entirely, or just allow the funding to be the amount proposed to be used entirely in the first 6 months, and then till it's exhausted, and then if we have money in January, that would continue to fund past that? Then we could fund the next 6 months or whatever the remaining balance, or do we have to split it up over 12 months?
The only thing I would say to that, Ryan, is that we worked very hard to get everyone on the same fiscal year. And if you would like my job and Greg's job to be even harder, we could break it into one 6 month contract.
That's why I asked.
That is a possibility. I'm sorry, Jana.
Well, and I think from my perspective, that makes our budgeting even harder in 2021.
And at least at this point, Sophia has a year contract in front of her, right? Even if it is a decreased contract, if we went to a 6 month, then she'd have no guarantee that we would have funding. So she's employed on this contract at least through June of next year.
Yeah.
Well, any suggestions from anyone?
I think we have Michael Drexel's pending motion, and then a number of motions we need to get through from the motions chart. Just as a reminder of where we are.
Okay. Did I get a second to Michael Drexel's motion?
Can you remind us, Joanna, what it was?
Yep. It was a very well-phrased and complicated motion to move that we terminate the existing 6 months on JUAB and Nephi contracts. However, we pay any expenses that come in the 30 days window that it takes to terminate those contracts between July 1st and when they're actually terminated. And then that we renegotiate, if you approve the ongoing grants, we would as part of the motion is just to have us terminate those contracts.
And actually a note just came on that Heather actually seconded that motion.
Thank you, Heather.
Okay, so that's, any further discussion on that motion? And if not, all those in favor, let's take a roll call.
I'll do the roll call, Sam.
Please.
Yep. All right, on this motion, and I'm saying this to remember my staff who is taking notes on this, the motion made by Mike Drexel on JUAB and Nephi. Sam?
Yes.
Don? Rich? Oh, sorry. I'll come back to you if you don't speak up. Sean?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
I think Wally had to leave. How about Mary?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Margaret?
Aye.
Representative Ferry? Joel?
Aye. There we go.
Senator Weiler? Senator Weiler, are you still there?
He's passing more bills.
Okay, Michael?
Yep.
And last but not least, our newest and brightest commissioner, Ms. Kamalu. Oh, I have Michael Drexel. You're second to last. Sorry. Lorraine, you're still, go.
Catching up to all the rest of the brilliance out there. So I say aye, thank you.
Definitely last but not least, and also bright and shining, Michael Drexel.
It's
And
his motion.
Definitely also not last but least, Ryan.
I was gonna say, can I vote or? Yeah.
And Heather, oh my God, Heather, I made this list before you all came on. Heather, you're next to. Ryan, what was your vote?
Yes.
Heather? Okay. Is there anyone else who I missed?
Kim, I.
Sorry, Kim. Okay, I think I have a complete list for future votes. I am sorry, Zoom is all I'm going to say. So I believe that overwhelmingly passes as unanimously.
Okay, the other motion
Okay, so I'm actually
was
going.
withdrawn.
Was what?
Margaret's motion was withdrawn.
Yep.
Right.
So if you bear with me for a second, I'm going to switch to the motions page, which I am not able to do very easily. Okay. You see the motions page that I have up. Is it big enough to read? You all have it in your materials, and it should, if you haven't printed it out and you're reading it on the screen, it should have updated with the changes I just made based on what we've talked about. I think you should all note that as we look at this, you come up as anonymous cormorant, anonymous bat, anonymous ibex, anonymous kiwi. So I don't know that you're looking at it, but I do know that you are on there, or someone is on there. There was a moment there where we thought unicorns were watching us. Okay, so Sam, if you want to run this, I would just ask that we go through some of these motions, which staff needs to deal with the technicalities of these grants, and then you can decide whether to do them individually or an overall approval.
Well, let me ask this. This went out to all the commissioners. Are there any questions about any of these motions?
And then, Sam, I think Michael Zimmerman had also made an overarching goal or motion, sorry, to approve all the grants. Sorry, I misstated that.
That is correct.
But these are your precast preference motions, right?
Yes. Just when the legislature does this, someone just jumps in and makes the motion. I should have pre-allocated who would make which motion. I can do that if you would like.
Well,
actually, I would rather just look at all of them, and is there a general motion that all these be made as one?
Well,
there's only two.
One is saying like with the amendment to the Nephi and Juab one that we did, right, Joanna?
That one's already passed.
Okay.
So motion one is essentially Joanna?
Joanna, you are really breaking up. I can't understand you.
So this is Michael Zimmerman. I made the motion to approve them subject to any changes. It seems to me motion number one, the prefab motion number one, is essentially a disciplining motion to the grantee, saying if they cut their baseline spending to less than what's set forth in their grant, that the staff bring them back so that they can be adjusted so that we aren't effectively funding those cuts. And it seems to me that's probably, given the way we're agonizing over these grants, That's probably fair. Am I breaking up or is Joanna disappearing?
Joanna is disappearing. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
So-
great. It's just
so
Joanna.
I think I'm inclined, because motion number basically assumes we're going to approve the proposal modified with Michael's amendment, and that we are then authorizing the staff to make sure that the counties and local governments don't cut their own funding and continue to get ours as allocated, which effectively would work to penalize other counties or other local governments who don't change their funding. So I would drop my motion, which I believe was seconded, I can't remember, and I would make motion number 1.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
I have reconnected. It's not my computer. This motion is not punitive. This motion is based on our statute. We have a statute that was, and if
Yes.
Senator Weiler were on here, he would say created to not supplant local spending, but to supplement local spending.
Right.
And so where actual budget cuts are made that reduce attorneys and reduce spending that is critical to the system, that I think we need to be able to come back and look at this. This is not saying that we will cut them automatically, right? This is saying we will come back, and it may be that we come back in January and ask for a statutory amendment for COVID purposes. But this is just so that the staff is not in the position of, we would like to encourage counties to maintain their spending on indigent defense above other budget cuts, and this allows us to do that because it does allow them to continue to increase or receive our grants. That's all it is.
So I'm withdrawing my motion and making motion number 1.
Is there a second?
Yes, this is Laureen, and I will second that. I'm glad to know about that.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah, I think there is further discussion. I think we have to be careful about this because we can all expect, with the unknown of what may be coming forward, to have budget cuts perhaps across the board. And I don't know how to deal with that. I mean, we're facing them already from our main funding partner. Our smaller funding partners we're not. But we're likely to face budget cuts. And what is likely to happen, particularly in places like Summit County and perhaps Tooele, that are dependent upon tax dollars, is we're likely to see not necessarily, I would not call them punitive, but perhaps across the board budget cuts that may affect every agency within a county. And most of the prime money comes to fund our entities are from counties. And counties are in a bad spot right now, particularly with sales tax, because that's not everything they rely upon in terms of creating budgets, but it's a significant percentage of money. And I think that we're going to be at a point in the not too distant future where counties are likely to approach every entity, whether that be a contract within their county like I am, or other people. And we may have a lot of sort of consideration to think about how we're going to deal with this when County A says we're cutting the defense budget by $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 or 2, 3, 4, 5% that everybody may be required to take. So I want us to keep that on the radar screen because I think that's going to be important.
Well, the point that I was making though is also that if counties reduce funding and target indigent defense, all of the thrashing we've done over allocating burdens and making hard choices and seeing the goals of the IDC put farther into the future are negated by the varying funding choices made by counties. Now, obviously, we can't do this back and forth endlessly, but if some county makes a big cut in the IDC allocate in the indigent defense budget in reliance on our grant. I mean, I guess it's a question, but I certainly would want to, given the pain we've inflicted on other people, it would seem would want to be in play. Maybe that's not realistic, and maybe that's too complex.
Sam, could I make a comment to this issue too?
Yeah.
This is Adam.
Please.
I can't tell if Joanna's still on, so I'll tell you about our discussion earlier today.
I am, but I'm going to leave briefly and come back because my computer gets mine.
Joanna made the point that this is not intended to be punitive, and I will echo that and want to recognize that all the motion does is to say we can bring this back for discussion. There is a statutory requirement that counties not lower their budgets, but in this situation, I don't think we realistically can say no county or city can diminish their budget when they are in fact likely to have broader cuts across the board in a lot of services. This is not just a down year, right? This is an unusual crisis. So the idea that we bring that back may be as simple as the commission evaluating whether it was a targeted cut to defense, public defender spending, or if it was broader cuts to budgets. And in some instances, we may see a lot smaller cut to public defense systems than we do to other services. I know that's going to be true in a number of counties. So while this motion says what it says, it's not a requirement to rescind the grant. It is the requirement to consider the circumstances. And Michael, I think that's why we have to evaluate what's going on in individual counties without concluding that a reduction in budget means a reduction in the grant funding.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying it seems to me in lieu of the motion I originally made, which would freeze us, this motion allows us to reconsider if in fact there's a reduction in local spending for the reason that you said, and so that we can analyze it. I mean, statutorily, they're not supposed to reduce funding and replace it with state money.
And I appreciate that. I understood that. I just want to make sure everyone knows that we've thought through this and recognized the challenges and want the commission to be able to have a mechanism to come back and evaluate these things and not feel like anybody's simply going to make cuts to grant funding. So that's been our discussion already with some.
Adam, this is Lorraine again, and the way I read it, and with what Joanna said, that it's not intended to be punitive. Would the wording be better that it is bring back for discussion or bring back for review instead of people assuming that the wording of bring back means cut back?
I think that would certainly be reasonable. These are motions for consideration, and it seems to me that clarifies what it is that we're trying to get to.
So you want to amend the way it reads to bring back for discussion? Just add that phrase in there?
Or even review.
Yeah.
I'd prefer review. This is Mike Drexel, just because we don't want to just discuss it. We may actually need to make some choices.
Right.
All right, then let's amend that, bring back for review any grant awards that have been allocated. It doesn't predetermine the steps that we are going to take as an IDC, but it allows us an opportunity to review and ascertain what really needs to be done.
Yeah.
And that's all we're asking.
With that explanation, I will second.
Okay? Any further discussion to the amended motion that we add that for review? If there's not, then all those in favor, and again, I would ask Joanna if you're there or are you gone?
You could,
She's
Sam,
gone.
you could just ask for if anyone opposes it,
Yeah, is anyone opposed to it? If not, then it passes. All right? Thank you. Let's go on to the next one. Greg, can you move that page up a little bit so we can see it? Motion number 2.
I think it's Leslie's screen that's.
Oh, Leslie, okay.
Thanks, Leslie.
Is this an alternative motion?
I don't understand this to be an alternative. I think this is about the reductions, and maybe Joanna can say on motion number 2, but I understood that having reduced the grant awards from what was requested, individual entities are now going to have to make a decision about whether or not they want to accept the funds at the reduced level or not. And if they, we want to encourage them to accept the grant as awarded, but to bring it back to us if in fact there's some concern. Is that right, Joanna?
That's the way I am.
So if they don't accept the grant, we will have extra money, basically. Is that right?
That's what it seems like to me.
Right.
I believe that's what's intended, and it mirrors the language of the it's related to the language in the first motion, so you may want to modify this slightly given the earlier discussion too. And Joanna's back, it looks like.
So the wording could be to be consistent, to allow staff to review any requests for grant changes.
Or bring back for review.
Bring back for review.
Yeah, that just adds what we did on the first motion.
Right.
So with that language in mind, Leslie, will you include that in there? Any further discussion? Anyone opposed to it? If not, everyone in favor of it, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, it passes.
Mr. Chair, on that last motion, could we please repeat who the motion and the second was on that last motion? I apologize.
We added the language, I move to allow the office staff to bring back for review, and it's been added now, any request for grant changes, but to have staff generally encourage grantees to accept grants as awarded by the IDC. And a yes vote is reflected.
And I think Greg was wondering who specifically made the motion and the second on that. I don't remember who made the motion, but if we didn't have a formal motion, I would make that motion. This is Mike Drexel.
Margaret will second it.
Thank you.
Right.
I'm back? Question mark? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thanks for getting through that. Good job. You guys are champs. And then now this is just the question of whether on the motion sheet, we've written out each separate motion you could make, or you can approve them as a whole. So that's the next, Leslie, if you scroll down. And I think I missed the conversation where you decided what to do on the global motion.
We adopted the first motion, modified slightly to include the content of the second. And then if we need a global motion, I would make a motion to approve the allocations in the staff sheet with the amendment that passed Michael Drexel's amendment.
Is there a second?
This is Ryan, I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion?
I had one point, if I could, Mr. Chair. This is Mike Drexel.
Go ahead.
On the Weber County reallocation that you did, Greg, it looked to me like perhaps the Weber County allocation actually went up as a result of that change that had been made, and that there was more money now going toward Weber County. And I just didn't get a chance to ask that earlier. I apologize. It looked to me like before our consideration of the issue, there was 50% funding of some sort on the difficult case specialty attorneys, but that 32,467 had been reallocated from that. And yet, I don't have the numbers in front of me that you had up, but did that actually capture exactly what was requested in that moment? Can you confirm for us, Greg, before we approve everything globally?
So the percentages look different because it's based on a percentage of the line item. But the total sum amount of 95,973.60 for those two line items combined remain the same, I believe. But I will double check and confirm that.
Thank you for doing that, Greg. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for your indulgence.
And the allocation was from the difficult case specialty attorney to the district defender contract, who was a young lawyer, and that's why that amount was set, if I remember the discussion.
So the easiest way to, Leslie, can you look through the individual motions and see, oh, I have it actually. So it's now at 129,253 and the original amount was 129,253.
Right.
So I think I appreciate your attention to detail, Mr. Drexel, but I think Greg has one-upped you on attention to detail. Not one-upped you.
No, he clearly does. He knows things that I'll never know, so I appreciate that.
Let me rephrase. He knew that you would ask, so he's on it.
Well, perfect. Good job, Greg. We didn't anticipate it. Okay, then my concern is resolved there. Mr. Chair, could I just ask one other question?
That's what you said the last time. Now we're into the third one. But go ahead.
Can I continue asking questions ad nauseum, Mr. Chair?
Sounds like being in court. Go ahead.
The only question I have is with a global motion to approve all these changes on the spreadsheet, there are a number of items here that individual commissioners are going to have to recuse on. And so taking account of where the recusals lie on a global motion that encompasses things that create the cause to recuse may be really difficult. I don't know. I'm just wondering if that's a concern for anyone else.
We still have a quorum, don't we, Joanna?
Yes. Please someone hire Mike Drexel if I ever quit. I can't see who you all are right now. I'm on a limited view because my computer has, despite being new, decided to go crazy. So I will let someone else count to 8. If we have 8 people still on, then we have a quorum. Or Leslie, if you can stop sharing your screen for a second, I can help.
I think Mike's point is that each grant, like Rich is going to recuse for Salt Lake County, Maureen will recuse for, is Davis getting anything? So
Margaret for Utah.
Yeah. So maybe we need to go one by one.
I think we might be able to do it. And I defer to Lana on this one, but I don't see her here. If everybody who has a conflict states it and states that they're only voting on their vote one way or another is only for the other one's not their conflict, that would be reflected in the record too.
And Ryan, I am here.
Oh, okay, there you are.
The conflict rule really goes to the idea that it's understood that individuals will have conflicts simply because a matter within their purview comes up in their duties as a board member. Generally, when an individual is appointed to a board or commission, it's expected and anticipated that they will put aside their personal concerns of either their private or private concerns or those related to their own job or their interest, and really do what's best and in the best interest of the board. If the nature of the conflict is so innate that you can't really separate the two, it probably is appropriate for a board member or commission member to recuse themselves. As we've seen today, the individual on the commission can otherwise still be available to present information as an interested party, just like any other county that appears before us and provides information, but they should not vote. So I think it's really important to kind of document those things so that there's not any kind of allegations of wrongdoing that come up afterwards. So with those considerations in mind, it would be helpful if people can indicate if there's a conflict and what matters their conflict relates to, and indicate that they won't be voting on it.
All right, then let's do the following. There's been a motion and a second, and what I would like to do, Rich, are you still on?
Yes, yes, I am.
Okay, and do you recuse on that portion of the material that relates to Salt Lake County?
Yes, I do.
And how do you vote on the rest of the awards?
I vote yes.
Yes. Margaret, do you recuse as it relates to Utah County?
I do.
And how do you vote on the remaining awards?
Yes.
For or against?
For.
Okay, yes. Who else has conflicts?
Margaret, do you need to recuse? And Lana, you can say yes or no. Recuse on Miller, Juab, and San Pete, and Nephi.
I'm happy. I mean, I'm happy to, if we just want to be err on the side of cautiousness.
All right, then let's include those because you do have something to do with those contracts as well. So you recuse on those as well?
Yes.
All right, but the vote is yay as to the rest of them, correct?
Yes, sorry, I muted myself.
Okay. Anyone else who has a conflict?
Mr. Chairman, this is Sean Milne, Tuella County. I would recuse from voting on our county's submission.
How do you vote on the remaining submissions?
Aye.
Okay. Anyone else? Lorraine?
No, Davis County did not apply, so I don't have any conflicts of interest. Thank you.
That's right.
What about Pam Vickery, Sam? Pam, do you have a conflict?
No.
I don't think so because they're related to LDA, not to my office.
Okay.
Right. All right. Anyone else opposed to any of these grants? If not, then I would assume that the rest of you vote yay on the grants. Is that correct? Yes?
Yep. Yes.
Yes.
All right. And Heather says yes. All right, that takes care of that motion. That's all of them. Was there anything else, Joanna?
I believe that is all of them. There is, oh, sorry, if you Leslie scroll to the very bottom. On the chart with all the allocations, there is $837 over. So that is currently not allocated for. If you wanted to make a motion for what we could do to that, I have a list of motions. Stop there. It could go back into SB 203, into our training program, into defense resources to put back in some other category or for some other use, or we could hold it in reserves. I don't know if you want to do something with that. It may also be that there are math errors in here that we may need that for, but I'm pretty sure there aren't.
I would suggest we hold it in reserve for that reason.
That will be my motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
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 Okay, it passes. It's held in reserve. Anything else, Joanna, that we need to address?
Just the remaining days that we have meetings. That's the last agenda item.
Okay, and the suggested dates, at least on the page that I have in front of me, are August 20th, September 17th, October 15th, November 19th, December 10th, and then January, once we get an idea of what it is that we're going to have, right?
Yep, and the one reason I would say we need an August 20th meeting is we did have a conversation with interim judiciary where they ask us to put our heads together and talk about a long-term solution to indigent defense in Utah. And I think they will ask us to report on that in the fall. And so I'd like to dedicate that August 20th meeting to that project and then any grant updates that we know at that point. So I know it seems like we're having a lot of meetings before the end of the year. We may be able to cancel a September or October meeting, maybe even November. We'll play with it. But for now, can everyone keep those meetings on their calendars? Or at least a quorum of you keep those meetings on your calendars?
Okay, that makes sense. And let's just keep those in mind. Anything else?
Nope.
I want to thank everyone for all the time that we all have spent on these issues. They are difficult, and it is not a very easy time to be addressing this, especially with the lack of funds that we have available. So I want to thank all of you, and I specifically want to thank the staff for the commission, because what you have done here is extraordinary work. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your support
with that,
and your work.
Well, and with that, I would entertain the motion from someone.
I move to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
Come on, everybody seconds that.
Second.
You're
All
done.
of us, of course. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Someday I
Bye.
look forward to being with you and all in person.